Looking forward to getting to know you, Aaron. Thank you. This is a great honor. I've heard great things about you. So,
well, don't get too excited, but I appreciate the invitation to be here with you today.
Good morning, everybody. We're giving our audience a couple of minutes to join us, and we will be starting in about 2 minutes.
So Dale, where are you actually situated right now?
In New Brunswick. So I've been here. What about yourself? Where do you live?
I'm not in this nice room behind me, but I'm in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Oh, Hoboken. Okay, yeah.
These are like my room goals in life.
Yeah.
But there's a decent chance a child's going to walk in at some point during the next half hour, so it's a good shield.
Yeah, I hear you.
Alan, where are you?
I am in the Laddey, Clark, and Ryan offices in Sparta.
Excellent.
In balmy Sparta.
I don't know if you know we moved to the North Pole, but the weather's starting to change a bit.
It sure is.
Okay, one more minute and then we will start.
Dale, I noticed a similar image in your LinkedIn as is over your shoulder. What's the significance there for you?
Well, I was, and my parents lived in Asbury Park, and I was sitting there one July 4th, and I saw a woman painting this picture. And my 16-year-old daughter and I had a little bet and said, I bet that's $1,000. And she said, no, it's probably less expensive. I went up, it was $200. This woman, Valerie, painting by Valerie, was fantastic. So I just happened to put it up. I didn't expect to have Zoom, so it's just at the right place in the room. So, but good question.
Okay, I think it's time to get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Levine. I'm the Director of Marketing at Laddey, Clark, and Ryan, a law firm here in Sparta and Morristown, New Jersey. We welcome you to our Innovation Forum. The forum is being presented by our 4 sponsors, Laddey, Clark, and Ryan, the DAC Group, Nisivoccia, and Fairleigh Dickinson University's Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. The program today we will start with an interview with Aaron Price of the TechUnited New Jersey. And then we will have our innovation panel speaking about innovation in the marketplace. So we do want to encourage everyone to feel free to use the chat function to ask questions throughout the program. We will take the questions at the appropriate times, but feel free to put in questions as the mood strikes you. I'd like to get the program started by introducing you to Dr. Dale Caldwell. Dale is the Executive Director of the FDU Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So he knows lots about innovation and he's well connected, and he's going to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Dale.
Alan, thank you very much. And I want to thank first the panelists for participating and the audience for coming out this morning. I have the honor of really getting to know Aaron Price, and Aaron is the president and CEO of TechUnited New Jersey, which provides business development, education, networking, and recognition opportunities, as well as advocacy for the state and region's tech, life science, and tech-related companies. He and another member of our panel, Mitch, Cahn, were just named to the NJ Biz Power 100 list. Congratulations, Aaron.
Thank you very much.
Well, you have become somewhat of a tech celebrity. You're very humble, and that's what we love about you, but you've become a tech celebrity. So I always like to hear the origin stories. I wrote this book on influence, the world products of our influence. How did you get into innovation and technology? That seems to be your life.
Well, also, thanks everyone for having me. It's great to see all of you. I have the chat open and we'll be watching it, so feel free to chime in. These things can be challenging on Zoom, so we want them to be as interactive as possible and welcome your input. Dale, I grew up in New Jersey. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I started my first company. My brother and I actually went to Milburn High School. We patented a weightlifting device while we were in school, which it turned out that there was no, what I didn't know the term of at the time, no addressable market for that actual device, but we learned a lot in the process about fundraising. I sold carabiner keychains to my friends to raise capital to pay for the patent. I was probably the youngest guy at the bodybuilding trade show convention trying to sell this product to and license it. So we learned a lot in the process. This has been part of my entire life, the entrepreneurship. I started my first real tech company was in college. I started something called Deliver You, which was the same service as what you know as Seamless and Grubhub type services today, online ordering for restaurants. And I've had which was reasonably successful, but nowhere near the 9-figure exit that Seamless saw. And I found the journey to be very isolating. My friends, I graduated college. So that business was in 1998, 1999. Graduated college in 2000. Most of my friends went to what were at the time more traditional career paths: doctors, lawyers, accountants, those sorts of things. And so I was kind of the entrepreneur tech guy, and no one really knew what to do with me. And I couldn't really lean on others for the kinds of advice that I desperately needed at the time. And so I started I'm skipping some years here and there, but it led to the creation of the New Jersey Tech Meetup, where I was surrounded. I started in hopes to surround myself with other entrepreneurs to help one another based on my own experience of having made lots of mistakes, which is the game in entrepreneurship. Excuse me. And that inspired the idea for a much larger event called the Propellify Innovation Festival, which was then acquired in 2019 by the New Jersey Tech Council that we've renamed as TechUnited New Jersey. So I can go into depth on any of those, but I felt the idea of I think it's a nice thing for you to say. I don't know if I'm much of a tech celebrity, but I've because of my interest in driving community around entrepreneurship, it's opened up a lot of doors and opportunity that I never could have imagined.
Well, that's one of the things you and I are somewhat evangelical about entrepreneurship. That's the answer to so many different things. And so TechUnited, I know it's a new name. Tell the audience, for those that don't know, what is TechUnited? What are some of the interesting things that you're working on now, and where are you headed?
So TechUnited, first of all, let me talk about the name, right? I'm assuming some in the audience are familiar with the New Jersey Tech Council, which is a 25-year-old organization. It's a nonprofit built to empower innovation around the region. When I was brought in, I was charged with kind of energizing the next chapter of this organization. And my experience in the tech community is that by bringing us together, by uniting, that's when the most interesting things happen. And not that there's anything wrong with the New Jersey Tech Council, but a council in theory is more sort of, at least the image of a council, kind of behind closed doors and prescribes what it thinks is best for the community, which has not exactly been my experience. And so that's how we landed on this name of TechUnited, about creating opportunity when we bring people, when we unite the community. We're focused on empowering, officially our refreshed mission is empowering entrepreneurs, instigators, and innovators to build a better future for all. And so the way that materializes is through a variety of small events and large, some advocacy on policy we think is important. This year in particular, although it's something we were doing before the pandemic, but we've leaned heavily into creating content and obviously digital experiences. But we're successful if we are accelerating the growth of companies, small and big. And so when a good example of that is we've got a great collaboration with PSEG, where last year we ran a startup competition. We're soon to announce the next version of this, where we were accelerating opportunity inside the doors of PSEG. Typically, it's a large organization. They tend to be hard to figure out how to navigate. Our relationship is, very senior, in some cases, even with Ralph Izzo, the CEO, where they're looking at how innovation drives the future of their business. TechUnited can serve the role as to solicit input from the community and get startups in the door much more quickly. And in this case, last year, gave out a $50,000 startup prize, which we'll be doing again. And so that, for me, that's a great example of the kinds of work I think is really important for us. Creating real opportunity for early stage companies. It's also leaning into some of the strengths I see in the region, and we can talk more about this, but we talked when we were getting started. I'm in Hoboken. I'm used to being in the shadow of New York City, and I want to make sure that we can stand out on our strengths. And as an entrepreneur, I think about how do we differentiate in general. So to me, the region is think about what are the strengths. And so clean tech has emerged, I believe, as one of those strengths. We've got some programming in health and life sciences, as you talked about in your intro. And connected cities and the future of smart cities in partnership with Verizon. So, we're looking at how do we stand out, raise awareness in the community, and create a unique, what I like to say is an unfair advantage for those in our community.
Wonderful. What are some of the challenges that New Jersey tech businesses have, and what are you working on to try to help them grow and be successful?
I mean, that could be the whole discussion, but I think the number one thing that I see is, I get this question all the time: what's going on in New Jersey? What's even happening there? You know, the way the New York City market in particular is significantly more mature. And so that's driven a lot of awareness of what's going on. There's quite a bit more capital. There's a lot more connectivity in the community in general, meaning investors making intro to other investors and to other corporates and to hires. That is, I think we're in a more immature state of that right now. And I think that starts with driving awareness of the amazing talent we have around this state. And how do we make sure that we shine a light on those both those individuals and those corporations so that we can create that kind of awareness. I think a good example of that is Google has 12,000 employees in their New York City headquarters. 25% of those people right now, or I'm sorry, 25% of those folks live in New Jersey and are now working out of New Jersey, which in effect has given Google a significant, 3,000 person headquarters. And so, I think there's a unique opportunity for New Jersey in general, but especially now to make sure that we're building relationships with those folks, obviously not just at Google, but that's an example, but to point out that there's so much opportunity here. There's so much great talent here. There are a lot of investors here that are going to the New York market that are interested in saying, in investing more in their backyard here. And so a big part of our mission is to make sure that we're finding those folks and driving awareness around that community.
Wonderful. I had an opportunity, and I don't know if you know that I started something called Entrepreneur Zones. We got it in the state legislation, and I'm chairing this working group with the NJEDA and Tim Sullivan. And the whole focus is to really focus on underserved urban areas and really use technology, but also traditional businesses and so on, and to really create jobs and build a community. So obviously I'm passionate about that, but I was on a panel with you and I was really pleasantly surprised about how passionate you are about technology and underserved communities. Could you talk some more about that?
To me, it's funny that I've become a champion of the New Jersey region, because to me, what I like about technology is that it democratizes opportunity. At least it has for me, right? And I think this gets to your question. In fact, it doesn't matter so much where your geography is. I think that's part of the beauty of these things, especially when we're talking about internet technology in particular. And that's what I'm referencing here, where you can kind of be anywhere and build something incredible. Obviously, there's a huge concentration in some geographies, but it's actually not necessary for a lot of these things to work. It's necessary because of the life cycle of these organizations needing talent and capital. For the technology to work, it's a little bit different. And so the more I've gotten involved in the regional component of this and understanding that actually this democratization as technology that I think about is not actually, there's not equal opportunity there. That's something that is very bothersome. And so I want to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to provide opportunity to anyone who's interested. And so, if someone has the grit and the perseverance and determination to build something incredible, because that is what it requires, this is not an easy game. I don't want connectivity or hunger. I mean, there's some real life issues we're talking about here to get in the way of real opportunity. And I want to make sure we're surrounding those communities with the right kinds of mentors to inspire generations to realize what's possible, with the use of technology.
Wonderful. And what about young
By the way,
people?
let me turn that question to you. What do you think we could be doing in New Jersey to inspire communities that may not have this kind of access?
Well, I think one of the things that, and I love what you're talking about technology, is that I think we need to really understand the importance of jobs, and the importance that creating jobs is really the answer to solving many of our social, economic, healthcare problems. And I think technology can do that. So if government can incentivize and support technology in a way that will create jobs, and there's job training so people in underserved communities can do that. So you and I are in sync, right here. But the future is young people, and so I guess I asked, especially being at Fairleigh Dickinson University, what do you see as kind of the future, or what can we do to really encourage young people to explore their entrepreneurial ideas and explore technology?
Well, first, I would say I think the future is young companies, not necessarily young people, although they tend to be young people. But there are some really interesting stories of older. In fact, the average successful venture-backed entrepreneur is in his or her 40s. I think it's 42 is the average age of the most successful exit. But I would agree in general, it tends to be a younger person's game, often because of the risk involved and where they are in their lives and they can afford to take that kind of risk. But so I got derailed. Remind me of the end of that question.
Yeah, well, just young people. Where, you know, how do we really?
Right. So I'm sorry.
People?
So I think there's this over celebritization of tech CEOs and tech companies in general, and people see these headlines. You know, I think GameStop stock is up again 100% today, of like kind of this get rich quick scheme, and that the internet technology is the fastest path to get there. And I think that's unfortunately a giant misconception, because the cost of entry is pretty low, but the cost, you know, the risk of failure is very, very high. And so I think the more that we can inspire young people, like there's this idea that if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. That how can, you know, right now, a lot of young people are on the menu. It's their attention that is being sold and monetized by Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, et cetera. And I think the more we can inspire young people to think about how do they get a seat at the table, and that actually building those tools is like I was talking about, the barriers to entry used to take, and there's probably people here who can relate to this, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in server costs and licensing fees and lots of capital to get something out the door. Now it's, you know, it could be free to test market a product, and you could know in a week if something has traction. And so I think inspiring young people to understand how do they become on the creator side of the equation and not the consumer side of the equation, and then that's monetizable. That could be a career, that could be something that creates jobs and long-term wealth potentially. You know, I think it's inspiring that transition. And so well, we like to tell a lot of the stories. You know, you talked earlier about the origin stories of how people got started. And I think for people to, you know, understanding that a lot of it is, people joke about the two people in the garage, but that is often how it starts. And metaphorically, in some component of, you know, Mark Lorry, the founder of Jet.com, acquired by Walmart for $3 billion, literally started by buying diapers at Costco and selling them out of his garage. Like, this is, I think if we can inspire young people with the grit and the determination and arm them with the tools to be creators, then interesting companies can be born.
Well, one of the things, so I do a stream TV show called Family Business World, and we do a lot of work with family businesses and so on. And the mentality of that has been continuity, typically. You know, some of them are over 100 years old. They've been there forever. A lot of young people are coming up in the tech world and said, I don't care. I want to sell out as quickly as possible. So is that good in the long term? Is that bad? Tell me your thoughts, because that's in total contrast to historically what's happened with family business.
You know, sorry, I'm just changing this. The lighting here got a little bright from the sun. I think it's good to know what you want. So I think it has to start with, what lifestyle does this person or this family trying to create? And is it about, if they want to raise capital and sell for a 10x multiple and have a board that's going to be, you know, on their, you know, on them all the time, that's one path to go. And that could create, that's one outcome, and has a certain amount of requirements to go with it. And I think that if it's, I just want to have a nice lifestyle and not, you know, and have a lot more flexibility and have complete and total control of things, there's nothing wrong with that outcome either. But I think it's critically important that people think about what's the end game that they're after, and then pursue the path that gets them there. Because I think, again, it's like, I think with the celebritization of tech companies, people are thinking, well, I should go raise, you know, X $1 million and you know, my valuation jumps to Y, and I'm going to sell for a giant multiple of that in the future. That's often not the case. That certainly can be the case, but that is often not the case. And I talked earlier about this addressable market idea. We built a device. I used to be in much better shape. We built a device that allowed you to add resistance to your body when you're doing pull-ups and dips. And so basically the number of people who can do a pull-up or a dip, you know, in 10 reps, 3 sets in the world is very, very low. Not something we had thought about in, you know, we thought, hey, my brother and I were doing this. Wouldn't it be great to add weight? So here's a device. And I think people, you know, when they think about raising capital, need to understand, like, how big does this opportunity get, and reverse engineer the capital requirements and the exit opportunities that exist in that industry to decide, and then match it with, do I want to be that person? Is this the career path that I want? And if the answers are yes, sure, go in that direction. And then there's lots and lots of great outcomes. I don't mean to be discouraging, but I think that people should start with what's the end goal, and then think of the steps to get there, and have the patience of, you know, it could be the average exit takes 8 years. Many of them are, you know, 2 decades old stories. So making sure they have the patience to understand what it takes to get there.
You know, this is, you know, there's a back and forth about this. And I was in the financial services industry when AT&T was broken up into the baby bells. So, there are many who are looking at Google and, and Facebook and other folks that just own too much, and close out opportunities for smaller entrepreneurial businesses. What's your thought? And I don't want to put you on the spot here, but what's your thought about that? How do you, what do you do? Do you just leave it as is, or do you try to break them up, or you tax them? What goes on?
I have been thinking late. I was very against the idea of breaking up these organizations until more recently. And now I'm more open to the idea. I'm not sure I'm fully at the point of definitely we should do it, but there is obviously a lot of responsibility that comes with the control or the reach that these organizations have. From the entrepreneurial perspective, which is where I thought you were going with this, if I'm thinking about starting a company that's in the space of a Google or a Facebook, and you get this, what if Google, Facebook, Amazon steals my idea, you've already lost. Those companies move slowly. They move faster than maybe AT&T did. But by nature, once you get to a certain size, you can't just get something out the door in a week or a month or sometimes a year. And so if someone's coming at that question with the idea of, should I even try? Google could turn it on tomorrow, which I hear all the time and I think is ridiculous. Is not worth the mind space. Don't let that be a barrier. But as far as breaking them up goes, first, when it comes to like specifically the more recent issue about free speech, that's not a free speech issue. Twitter's a private company. Facebook's a private company. They have the right to moderate what shows up on their channels. I think that's gotten conflated in the wrong direction, and I have no problem with that. Right. But as far as now that they're in somewhat of a public domain, and does it make sense, like you talked about, breaking up, the AT&Ts of the world back? I think it's worth a conversation. I don't have a very strong point of view, but I have moved a bit on this in the last couple of months, just because there is so much power concentrated there.
Well, one of the things, and I want your thoughts on this. So my dad knew and marched with Dr. King, so I grew up around the civil rights movement, and have been working with some groups that are looking to do kind of what Facebook or other groups are doing for a particular community, for the Black community, for others. And so there's some who believe that, that what Facebook is doing, there's an opportunity to do that for targeted communities, because they're changing, they've gotten a little greedy about things and so on. What do you think about that as the next step to really begin to do that, to really focus some of the social media on communities?
I think that this is where capitalism can plays out in an interesting way. I think that makes a ton of sense, right? And you have seen that in certain communities where people feel like the networks that they're on don't speak to them authentically, and they're going elsewhere. So Chief is a good example of that. It's a professional women's network. They happen to be venture backed. It's growing pretty rapidly, and it speaks more to professional women who want to grow their career and have an ability to network. And I'm slightly a part of that community, and to me it looks a lot like LinkedIn, but it's very clear that women feel like this is a much more authentic place for them to grow their careers and to network with other women in a safe and authentic way. There's a guy who I posted about on LinkedIn yesterday who started a company called Community Connect back in 1996. His name is Ben Sun. His first company was Black Planet, or Community Connect ran Black Planet, Asian Ave, and Mi Gente. It seems like it's time to bring those back. But when I talk about the capitalism piece, like, the product has to be good, it has to resonate, they have to be authentic, it has to work. But from a societal perspective, it certainly seems to make sense. And I think that, again, if entrepreneurs think there's an opportunity, they think they can, build a better mousetrap that's more authentic to these communities, absolutely go for it.
You do a lot of speaking, and you're obviously fantastic at it, and so you must get a lot of questions. What are some of the questions and answers that you have from the small business folks, the local business, the independent business folks? What advice would you give them? Unfortunately, this goes so quickly, we only have a few more minutes. But yeah, what advice would you give them?
There's probably two things that stand out. One is that every company should think of themselves as a tech company, and every company, therefore, I believe, should think of themselves as a media brand. And what I mean by that is the pandemic, I think, shined a spotlight on this. If you were tech enabled as a local dry cleaner, you could stay in business, you can communicate with your customers, you could figure out ways to have contactless delivery, you could still take payment, things worked. If you were still a more traditional retailer, you really struggled to adapt to the needs of this current environment. And so I think that if there's a huge opportunity for a small, when we talk about like Main Street businesses, 30% of whom, by the way, have closed in the last during the pandemic. Those that can adapt technology very, very rapidly and leverage. So when I talk about the media piece, then leverage tools like Shopify and Instagram, like build a brand online. These things scale. So I remember as a younger entrepreneur thinking about, well, if you're Best Buy and you've got thousands of stores around the country, say, real estate is a very, very important part of your business model. There is only one bestbuy.com destination. That could have been one store in the middle of the country. That could have been like it is, thousands. But and I'm skipping some of the logistical need. But my point is, any of these local retailers, if they think about things differently, can add dramatic scale to their business. But they have to get the reach beyond just their local community, and they have to make sure that they're, the average sale takes 7 touch points. Social media is a fantastic way to make that happen. There's ways that lawyers, dry cleaners, bodegas can stand out by having a voice, by being recognized, by being in their community, leveraging tools, to take it full circle like Facebook to get hyper targeted to who's in their backyard. So I would say, like, embrace technology. If you don't see yourselves as a technology company, make sure you are technology powered, technology enabled, so that you build longevity for your business.
I always say, there's a big difference between a small business owner and an entrepreneur. So often, and now, and because of the pandemic, a lot of those small business owners have either become entrepreneurs or they've gone out of business.
Yeah.
Before we go, again, I know a little bit about Propelify. I haven't had a chance to go. The audience probably knows. Tell me what it is. How do you come up with it? And what's the future of Propelify?
So Propelify, I mentioned earlier, I started the New Jersey Tech Meetup. I thought it would be, 20 people at a bar talking about, what they were working on. The first one was 150 people, and then they kind of kept, the next one was it was about that and standing room only, and they kind of kept growing. And it got to a point where I said, let's bring this community together at significant scale. Why are we going to South by Southwest in Austin? Why can't we do this in this market? And to be clear, it wasn't about New Jersey. It's still really not about New Jersey. And I'll talk about that in a moment. It was about how do we create something best in class that brings together, some of the best minds around. And so the event itself is, it's all about entrepreneurship and innovation. We have 2 stages of concurrent talks. We've had the governor and Gary Vaynerchuk and Ariana Huffington, Bobby Brown speak, and lots of others whose resumes are equally as impressive, but maybe you don't recognize the names as much. And startup exhibitors, drone racing. We did interviews on a Ferris wheel one year. So it's a really fun business conference, but it's a way to bring together entrepreneurs and innovators to do the same thing that TechUnited is aimed to do year round, which is to accelerate innovation and create opportunity. And so last year it was online. We expect it'll be online again this year. I was sort of more than pleasantly, sort of shockingly surprised at how well it went online. And regardless of the future, I expect we'll have a hybrid event for the long term. And so the goal is to bring together the community to create opportunity. When I talk about the New Jersey piece, to me, the opportunity that happens, or the byproduct of this event, and I would say, I think this should happen with all the companies around the region. I don't think we should be doing them because we're in New Jersey. I think the New Jersey region should benefit because we set a really high bar and push to do really great things. That was my goal with Propelify. Set a really high bar. Don't sell for mediocrity, which I see a lot in the market. And we got noticed, which was great.
When is it this year?
This year it's changed to a 5-day event from what was a single-day event held on Peoria and Hoboken. It's October 4th through 9th.
Okay, October 4th through 9th. Great. Well, I will definitely be there. So really, we're almost at the time for just a couple more questions. One, I'm at Fairleigh Dickinson. I went to Princeton undergrad. I got my doctorate from Seton Hall. So the universities in New Jersey are important, and there's an opportunity to tie into tech. How do you work with universities, or how can we work together more with the great stuff you're doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I agree with you. I think when we talk about this talent piece, we're losing so many students to other markets when they get into the job market. And so we are working towards how do we make sure that there's connectivity between the graduating students and the companies that are hiring in this region, that there's inspiration. Like, again, when I talk about the maturity of the market, those who are interested in entrepreneurship, it's easier to plug into New York City. And so we're trying to create more of those mentorship and connection points for graduating students locally. it tends to be when you find some people, in your backyard, you stay in that region because they help you, you build your business, they help you grow. You feel like you have a little bit of a tribe. And so I think the more we can leverage the TechUnited community, connect them with the organization or the universities in particular around the state, the better. We have some things unfolding there. I'll follow up with you to talk about how we can get Fairleigh Dickinson more involved, but this is something we think a lot about, and how do we make sure that there's opportunity for students and that they feel like they can connect into this community. And I think it's very, very important.
I had the opportunity last night actually to interview Ralph Sampson, the NBA Hall of Famer, and just a great guy, but really a brilliant guy doing some stuff really focused on entrepreneurship. So I'm asking you the same question I asked him. So you've done amazing things. You've become a legend in many ways. So what is your legacy as you look back? And I often ask people, when you're 90 and you're looking back, you've done a lot already. Aaron, what legacy do you want to leave for the world doing technology and other things?
Well, first, you're much too nice to me, but I appreciate it. So we should hang out more often. The first, I would say my family is the most important thing to me. And if I raise, I have 2 daughters, and if they end up, I'm sure they will end up, but my legacy is really through them. If they end up having really strong impacts on society and have happy lives, I think that's the number one thing. That's probably 99% of my interest. But when it comes to these sorts of things, I landed in this seat by accident, right? I'm an entrepreneur. I saw some opportunity. I wanted to build a little community. It grew and grew and grew. I didn't even really want to do this kind of work. I was much more interested in building a true tech company. And I've embraced that this has become a strength. And what really resonates with me is when people share their stories of, hey, I quit. This has happened many times. I came to Propelify, worked at XYZ company. I quit my job that day and started something, in that week. One of those guys now has like a 20-person, really interesting company. Or I met somebody told us last week that they were raising a round of capital for investment. They just closed a $30 million investment from someone who they met at our event 2 years ago. Things like that give me a lot of, it's very, very gratifying. So to me, the legacy is, if we genuinely do create opportunity for people, that makes me feel really good. If we can leverage this reach, for others to build their businesses. Entrepreneurship is primarily about solving problems. This idea of to build a better future for all is, how do we make sure that we get behind those who really are solving problems that are helping real people? And so if we can leverage, this platform to do that, then I'll feel pretty good about the legacy.
Well, you're well on your way. And so Aaron, unfortunately, we just had a few minutes to talk to you. We could talk for another hour and a half. Are you going to hang out with us for a little bit?
I'm going to be hanging out. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we'll get some more.
I'm not part of the next panel, but I'll be hanging out for later.
Yeah. So if people have some questions or other things that we didn't talk about, but I want to thank you. So we're going to move on to the next part, and I want to make some measure. But Aaron, you're amazing as always. It's I really want you involved with these entrepreneur zones, because we really want tech to be part of it. And Tim Sullivan and the state has put it in legislation. So I think we can do some really neat stuff together, and some key cities.
I would love to talk to you more about that. And I would say to those listening, you may look at someone like Dale or someone like me as the champions of this, but this is a team sport. And so if everyone does something, however small or large the effort, it is a community effort. So if whether it's mentoring someone, or, hey, Dale, how can I help out, or getting involved with TechUnited, we can't do these things alone. And so we would very much welcome and encourage, I think, the involvement of all of those interested.
I'm big on terminology. And I think one of the things that you and I are about is that, people often talk about top down versus bottom up, but I really say people up. I'm really pushing this term people up. And what technology is a people up opportunity for people to control their destiny, instead of a few people sitting in a room saying, we're going to do this business, we're going to do that business. And I think that's what you and I think a lot of the audience is all about. One of my frustrations with Zoom is that we can't clap. You'd get a standing ovation for this. You're really great comments, and it's just an honor to interview you. And I see in the Q&A people are thanking you. So hang around. I'm going to do some introductions and so as I give your introduction, I would like you to turn on your camera. So Jennifer Cable is a second-generation family business leader at Thorlabs, which is a global photonics company headquartered in Newton, New Jersey. Thorlabs was founded in 1989 by Alex Cable, her father. She's currently the president of Thorlabs and leads sales and marketing strategy, digital transformation efforts, people and culture initiatives, and strategic planning for the organization. Jennifer Cable. Mitch Cahn is someone who I've had the opportunity to hear, who is really a dynamo. He's president of Unionwear, custom embroiderers and manufacturers of made in the USA goods. He has done more pivoting than most businesses, so I'm anxious to hear from him. Doug Collins is a CPA and partner with Nisivoccia. Doug specializes in providing tax planning and consulting services for individuals and businesses in various segments, including real estate, construction contractors, and manufacturing. He also serves as the partner lead of the firm's real estate group. Welcome, Doug. Thomas Ryan is a founding partner and is currently the managing partner of Laddey, Clark & Ryan, LLP, a law firm with more than 15 attorneys in Sparta and Morristown. Welcome, Thomas. And Alan Scharfstein, who I had the opportunity of having on my show, is the founder and president of the DAC Group, an M&A advisory firm that guides middle market business owners to maximize the value of their company when looking to sell, acquire, merge, or grow. So welcome panel. We're going to begin with about 2 minutes from each of you, starting with Jennifer, just to kind of introduce yourself and say hello.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for the invitation and for the chance to speak on this topic. It's close to my heart, as Dale, when you're describing the initiatives I'm involved with, you could probably see that overlap. So, for me, the topic of innovation it's core to the Thorlabs story. And, as Dale and Aaron were describing, so many of the elements to successful entrepreneurship, I think we really saw that in our own origin story. So my father was a non-traditional student. He was a little older when he went to Rutgers. He'd had kind of a circuitous path. He'd worked as a machinist and a chef. So he really got his start at Rutgers, and then he, by chance, got a job at Bell Labs, working in the lab of Steve Chu. So very New Jersey-based innovation story. And through that work, he realized there was a market for the types of products that we've gone on to produce for 30 years. So he really recognized, an unmet need. But he started small. He started by machining a few very, very simple kind of mechanical parts, some posts and some mounts, so holders for optics and mirrors. So really, really basic stuff. So from the beginning, we realized that wasn't enough to build a successful business. So he's been innovating, and I think the company that he's built has been innovating from the very beginning. So for us, it's really tied to our products. I think without, the base of products that we have over 20,000 products to serve the photonics market. So our market is really based on innovation. Our key customers are scientists and researchers, whether in an academic setting or more of an industrial setting. So for us, being able to innovate alongside of our customers, closely collaborating with them, is just key to how we do business, how we're successful in our field. So without that piece, I think that, we wouldn't have a Thorlabs, and we certainly wouldn't have the 30 years of success. So that piece is critical. In recent times, and, I'm thinking maybe even 15 years back, we realized we really needed to build tools to support that core piece of our business. So we've actually built kind of internal tools to support the rapid pace of product innovation that we push our teams to deliver on. So we basically, we typically release around 1,000 new products a year. And we do that through an internal forum called Brainwave. Anyone in the company can contribute an idea. It kind of starts as an open forum. And then those ideas are picked up by our engineering teams and brought through the kind of product release cycle. So that was a homegrown tool, kind of an innovative tool, thanks to our web team, that we've been able to leverage to support our rapid pace of innovation. Thinking about that innovation, we've gone from those simple parts that I mentioned. We call it moving up the supply chain. So we've started very, very simple with optics and mounts, and now we're getting into the field of full instrumentation. So one really cool technology I love to highlight is called Optical Coherence Tomography. It's a mouthful, but it's a medical imaging technology that actually allows you to image through human flesh a couple of centimeters. So it's hugely important for example, we've had really successful trials around breast cancer surgeries. So margin detection during a lumpectomy means that you can successfully, capture all the cancer cells as opposed to having to go back for a second surgery if it shows that cancer is left behind in the body. So stuff like that is just so cool to be a part of. I get so amped when I hear about that and can talk to the teams working on it. More recently.
save some of that because we're just going to
Yeah.
go around. Okay.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I was launching into my innovation response.
No, yeah, we're going to get to that. So,
Sure.
but what I want to have you on the Family Business World show, and so
Yeah,
and really,
absolutely.
it's just a couple minutes. Mitch, if you could say a little bit about your business.
Sure. So at Unionwear, we manufacture from scratch 100% made in USA baseball hats, backpacks, messenger bags, portfolios, and binders. We have 175 union sewers in Newark. I started the business in 1992. I had 6 sewers and I had a contract from Ralph Lauren to make baseball hats. I've evolved the business and pivoted the business dozens of times. And I've generally grown by buying the assets of bankrupt manufacturers of related products. So while we make bags and hats, what we really sell is made in USA. And we sell it to clients who want to show their commitment to our economy by putting a made in USA label inside promotional items and event merchandise with their logo on it. This began with us selling to labor unions. That's why the name of the company is Unionwear. And then we expanded into political campaigns with Al Gore and have stuck with that market ever since. We do a lot of business with the US government. And now we also, for the last 10 years, have expanded into large domestic manufacturers like Chrysler and Budweiser, who want to remain consistent with their marketing, and socially conscious companies like Google and other tech giants who want to avoid any affiliation with sweatshops that might come with a made in China label. So for us, innovation is less about product innovation and more about finding new ways to remain competitive with China or sell our existing products to more markets. We need to constantly embrace other people's innovations to compete with much cheaper imports, automation, cloud mobile ERP, and lean manufacturing, to name a couple of them. And the homegrown innovation that has the biggest impact has been our website, which looks like a traditional web store carrying tens of thousands of items in inventory, but is really a complicated collection of interconnected technologies that show users virtual prototypes, which we may not even have the raw materials for in inventory. And when they're ordered, we manufacture them on demand very quickly. So we were looking forward to 2020 for years. It was absolutely guaranteed to be a monster year for us. And I know you're going to be talking about pivoting in a little bit, so I will keep everyone in suspense on that.
Yeah, exactly. And you have a great pivot story. Thanks, Mitch. Doug.
Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to tell you a little bit about Nisivoccia LLP. We are a full-service CPA firm and with 16 partners and about 100 staff members. And in our role, right, as a innovation is twofold. So we have an innovation for our own, staff, our own service, our own processes, and then we're there to assist our clients. Our clients are in multiple different areas of business and nonprofits and different industries along those lines. So our staff is constantly innovating within ourselves, and communication being a key. Even before the pandemic, right, is, communication efficiencies, trying to get, products and services out better and quicker. And obviously once the pandemic hit, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, is you had to adjust rather quickly and to the same process. So, so it's a ever changing, I think for the last, I've been in this business now for 28 years, and it's changed drastically in all those years of innovation, where you used to have green bar paper, and used to use colored pencils and different 13 columns, we used to call it. So, and now we're such a digital platform for our own business, as well as our clients are moving in that same direction. So we all have to grow together and innovate and change as things move on. So that's pretty much the basis of what we work with.
Well, thank you, Doug. And Thomas.
Hey, Dale, thanks very much for including me in this distinguished panel. It's really rather humbling to take a look at the lineup of folks that we have here, and then I get slipped in as well. Very kind, very exciting. Laddey, Clark & Ryan is a law firm that works with individuals as well as small and mid-sized businesses and corporations. And the exciting thing for me this morning really is to listen, listen to Aaron, listen to Jennifer, talk about innovation and technology that really is going to help not only my own law firm, but also the clients that we work with. And the thing that really catches my attention is touching upon collaboration technology. Because if we take a look at where we are right now, right now in this time, it's a need for collaboration. It's a need for working together, because we've shifted, of course, from a physical office where everybody's in the same place working together, and now we've moved to a more remote workplace. I'm really interested to learn more from Jennifer about brainwave, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because what I believe we have lost in our shift to remote work, and I'm not an enemy of remote work, but I believe we've lost some things as a result of that shift. And, I'm not naive to think once the pandemic is addressed and resolved, that suddenly remote work is going to go away and it's back into the old-fashioned brick and mortar office. But one thing we've got to focus on is a lack of spontaneous interactions. We've got to look at number two, fostering a cohesive company culture. How are we going to do that with the shift toward more remote workplaces? Integrating new team members into our culture. That's one of the challenges we've had over the past year in terms of bringing on young members of our team and really introducing them to our culture and getting them involved in our culture. And then number four is not just a marketing premise, but the sharing of ideas through opportunities enabled by proximity. In other words, going to the water cooler. Just having lunch in a common lunchroom and having some spontaneous discussions that lead to great ideas. I mean, the accelerated adoption and embracing of a remote workplace will continue, as I indicated, even after the coronavirus pandemic ends. But as a result, innovation and technology really need to meet the unique challenge that this moment is presenting to us, and we've got to answer those questions that I was touching upon. How can we harness technology and innovation to bring people together? And again, I use that phrase or terms, collaboration technology, and I must give credit to a terrific thought leader and writer, Matt Rotenberg of Dashboard Legal. Who really has developed the concept and put it out there for discussion, because we really value and place an emphasis upon teams. And while certainly Zoom, how many Zoom meetings has everybody been in this week? How many are we going to be in tomorrow and the next day? I mean, you're talking 3, 4, 5, 6 Zoom meetings, but that can be very static in terms of participation. We look at our traditional list of emails and, we view that as technology, but that can really be siloed in terms of interaction. So it's the spontaneous exchange of ideas that I see the need for innovation. And I hear that need from our clients. And so therefore, I look forward to hearing more about brainwave and other platforms that are going to cultivate the interaction and that team approach. So thanks very much for including me in this great discussion.
Thank you, Thomas. Alan?
Thanks, Dale, and thank you for the invitation to join everybody here today. I am head of the DAC Group, and the DAC Group is a middle market investment bank focusing on mergers and acquisitions. But if you really think about what we do, our job is to help innovators and entrepreneurs figure out how to get their businesses to the next level. People come up with great ideas. And, if you think about New Jersey has been one of the most innovative states around, going back to days of Thomas Edison, and if we take a look at New Jersey in terms of the number of entrepreneurial businesses that are located here, there are very few places where you can see the same level of concentration of these entrepreneurial businesses as exist right here in our backyard. So entrepreneurs build great businesses, but then they're faced with the question of when and how do they grow those businesses? How do they exit it? How do they monetize the businesses? It's a different skill set than many entrepreneurs have. And our job as a advisor to middle market businesses is to help them figure out what the answers to those questions are. How do you get the funds to build your business? When do you acquire? You know, when is it the time to leave? I think one of the best quotes that I've heard about timing of exits. Someone once asked Commodore Vanderbilt how he made all his money, and he said, "I made it by selling every one of my businesses too early." So, you know, we have to think about that also in terms of when is the right time. And the other thing I would say today is that not only do we help entrepreneurs and business owners figure out these questions, there are more and more innovative ways that exist now for business owners to make these decisions. Just as a quick example, it used to be that a business owner, as he built his business, had a choice. You could continue to own it. You could grow it through acquisition, possibly. You could sell it. But now business owners have other choices. For example, because of the growth of private equity, business owners can say, you know what, let's take some money off the table right now. Let's hedge our bets, but let's get a second bite at the apple by getting a partner in there who can help us grow a business even more. So our goal really is to help business owners do that. And in this environment, with the amount of innovation that's going on, there's just more and more fun that we can have as we find new and innovative ways to help business owners figure out how to get their businesses to the next level.
Wonderful, Alan. Thank you so much. So we heard Aaron talk about higher level innovation strategies and what's going on with technology. So we're going to get into the grassroots for businesses and what you advise specific businesses in this panel. So Jennifer, I want to start with the entrepreneurs and say, how has your company used innovation to pivot in recent times?
Thanks, Dale. So I think for us, kind of in a few ways. So, speaking in the pandemic year sense, I think first we looked how we could help. So we did use some of our production equipment to build face shields and build UV sterilization boxes for healthcare and frontline workers. We also think about how do we meet the needs of our customers who are working in the life sciences space. So, we went after opportunities with our customers on the sales team side that typically might have been a little bit of a reach for us. And we were able to kind of use our global team of engineers and get them to work together in new ways to build tools that support customers working in the life sciences. So we've had customers directly involved in testing, also in vaccine development. So that's been, very exciting to be a part of. So slightly kind of a neighborhood away from our core market of photonics. In terms of, how we as a company internally have changed what we do, a big problem this year is just not being able to see our customers. We don't have trade shows, we don't have in-person visits with them. So thinking about ways that we get them content that they need, but also we can build a meaningful connection. So, not just trying to do, cold calls or more meetings, more Zoom meetings. I think we've all become exhausted by that to some degree. So one approach that we took was building out a video series. So we have a webinar series as well as insights videos. So the webinars, we have internal speakers and some external speakers. And really, it's not a product pitch. It's really about explaining a new technology area, explaining a new application of a technology. So it's interesting to our customers who are researchers. It's more academic in nature. And it's really, Thorlabs sponsored, but it's not about pushing a Thorlabs product. The insights videos are really about how do we give kind of tips and tricks to folks that are working in a lab. So maybe a junior researcher that's less comfortable working with some of the equipment. So we're just trying to build that connection. So we put a ton of resources into these video series. So we had to pivot our marketing teams as well to be comfortable making and producing these videos. The third side, I think, on the operations, we have had a digital transformation that's been underway prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic certainly accelerated it. So shifting from on-prem to cloud servers, a lot of the tools, like we just launched Teams right before the pandemic hit, which is great timing. And our IT team was great in shifting everyone really quickly to use Teams, which is our alternative to Zoom. And we've been trying to build out Teams as a forum for collaboration. So to Thomas's kind of query about how do we get those water cooler moments, we're really trying to use Teams. So we're having Teams channels, kind of like a Slack channel where people are focused on one product, they can collaborate together. And we know that this is a multi-year effort. So we also have kind of more ongoing projects here. So example would be we have a Factory of the Future initiative. So we're looking to build more kind of machine learning, more intelligence into our factory floor. So we know it's going to continue for a while, but this year has certainly helped us kind of push and accelerate those efforts.
Excellent, excellent. Mitch, what about you? What about how are you using innovation to pivot, in recent times?
Well, we do have a lot of experience pivoting. The biggest one we had before this year was in 1994, when the entire fashion industry moved to Asia, moved manufacturing to Asia, and we had to come up with a brand new business model, which ended up being made in USA promotional products. But we never had to pivot an entire business in 2 weeks before. So as I said earlier, we were looking forward to this year for years. It was going to be a monster year. We had 3 mega events we had contracts for: the census, the Olympics, and the presidential election. And there was not going to be anything that could stop this year from being great. So it was very shocking in early March when all of the candidates that we had contracts with dropped out of the presidential race. And then the Olympics got postponed and the census got postponed. And suddenly I had 175 production employees with absolutely nothing to work on. So I ended up calling the international director of our labor union, which was fortunately for us affiliated with the SEIU 1199, which represents the hospital workers in New York City. This is the end of March 2020. And I had them put me in touch with the head of the hospital association. And I said, is there anything that we can sew for you? And he said, yes, we don't have anything. We can't get anything. Nothing's coming in from China. Can you make a face? He sent me about pictures of 10 different products. I looked at the face shield and I said, that is the clear plastic we use in our binders. That's the foam we use in our backpack straps. And that's the elastic headband that we use in our baseball hats. We can make these right now. And I remember making a bunch of different samples. I didn't have any specs. I sent them overnight. And the next day we started getting orders and we eventually ended up doing close to 1 million units for the New York City hospitals and a lot of other public hospitals over the next few months. We had the same experience a few weeks later with hospital gowns. Now, that whole experience was not smooth sailing because we couldn't get materials, we couldn't get trucks, we couldn't even get our people to work. And then when they came to work, we had to deal with all sorts of new challenges, like keeping them safe and keeping them separate from one another on a production line. So there was a lot of innovation there. We used our skills as contract manufacturers to troubleshoot. We were very results oriented. And we were able to get all of these products completed. And then towards the middle to end of the summer, PPE started coming in again, really inexpensively from China. And we were able to pivot back to election merchandise then, and then ended up having a very good year between the PPE and the election merchandise. But now we're experiencing another pivot because there's no PPE, there's no election, and our main business is event oriented and retail oriented, fashion retail. And both of those are still completely dead. No one's buying new clothes anymore. No one's buying new bags, not going anywhere. So around the time of the election, we decided to make one more major pivot, and that would be to government and military contracting. We have experience as a subcontractor for the military, but we had not been a prime contractor for the military. So I ended up hiring very seasoned professionals away from companies that were going through Chapter 11. A lot of the bigger fashion companies had military arms. They did like Brooks Brothers did military, the uniforms, dress uniforms to military. So I hired their director of military sales and hired a sourcing professional, and then spent hundreds of hours working on compliance, security clearance, documenting safety and quality procedures, and launched our initiative to really expand our government business. And at this point, I am very confident in the future. I'm confident that this government business is going to carry us through this year, that the economy will rebound, and I am investing heavily in scaling our business, because when the economy rebounds, we feel like we'll be a much larger business.
Wonderful. Well, that's great. We're hearing real, we heard a higher level innovation. We're hearing it from the ground. Now I want to talk to the experts. And so, what innovative approaches are you seeing your clients use to pivot in recent times? I'll open it up to Doug, Tom, or Alan. Alan?
Yeah, well, look, the fascinating thing to me is as this pandemic hit, we assumed that our business was going to be dead in the water because who's going to be doing deals in the time of a pandemic? But interestingly enough, they are happening and happening at a pretty fast rate. And I think a lot of that is driven by the fact that there are certain sectors of the economy that remain relatively strong. I mean, amazingly enough. And why are they so strong? Well, it's probably because you have people like Jennifer and Mitch driving their companies to innovate and change. And as a result of that, what you're seeing is with the exception of certain sectors like hospitality and travel, where they have been totally devastated. What you're seeing is that deals are still getting done amazingly, but they're getting done with very different structures. And they're getting done in different ways. I mean, we just closed several deals where buyers and sellers never met each other in the same room in making a deal. Wow. that is totally transformational. I mean, that's incredible to me that these Zoom calls will allow people to do things like that, but they do. And people are figured out how to do this, how to make the deals, how to pivot the deal making so that they do that. And I'll just make one other comment, which is the other thing that we're seeing, which is amazing, is that we probably in terms of pipeline have more deals going on now than ever. And some of it is because everything has remained strong throughout this whole pandemic from a financial standpoint, because so many companies have innovated. But what's also true is that many business owners are exhausted. I mean, this has been a grueling time, even for companies that do really good things. It's just been tiring. And so there is just an emotional drain on so many entrepreneurs that are causing them to just make a different decision than maybe they would have made had they not had to live through the last 12 months.
Great. Tom, you have your mic off. Yep.
Yeah, Dale, I was just going to make the startling confession that law firms are just not known for innovation and flexibility. Essentially, our work is built upon precedent and past practice. But 12 months ago,
Tom,
we're going to be at the office and work strictly remotely 12 months. I think I would have just locked the doors and said, well, it was a great career and a great business. But we were forced to become more flexible. We were forced to innovate, and we were forced to move forward. One of the challenges, though, that the legal community has, is forcing the courts to innovate. In business, we do a lot of litigation, commercial litigation, personal injury litigation, government litigation, but we need access to courts. And the courts was based on physical presence, and trying to get judges and attorneys to go a more innovative model for resolving disputes has been a real challenge. And that's where we look to our entrepreneurs to come into this public sector, in addition to the private sector, enable our court system to be flexible, to be more accommodating to road access.
I think we got most of it. You faded in and out a little bit. As far as Doug, what about clients? What about some of your clients? Are you hearing any innovations that your clients are working on?
Sure. It's so we can all can testify to. It's been a crazy year overall. And one thing I'll just debate with Tom. I think accountants maybe are slower to innovation than attorneys, but we can talk about that later. So with our clients, if you think back a year, everyone got scared, right, to their business. I mean, they got scared for their personal health and their business at the same time. And as Mitch and Jennifer elaborated on that, their business had to move fast and change and keep pivoting. And our clients had to do the same thing. So depending on the type of business they're in, if they were a manufacturer, if they had to have people there, they had to adjust. They had to change the technology as best they could. But if you still need people putting things together in a manufacturing environment, they have to be there. One quick story, which an owner of a manufacturing client of mine was telling me that on his way home, that he had to stop at the liquor store, not for necessarily liquor, but for the grain alcohol, because he got a recipe off the internet how to make hand sanitizer because he couldn't buy it at the time. So for his staff. So here's the owner of the company, with the internet recipe doing that, and other owners of companies, they were actually at night with their family making cloth face masks, right? Because you couldn't get it a year ago. Now that's since there's all changes mentioned now, there's plenty of that, but they were pivoting and elaborating their just to get the work done in that environment. The other thing that really they had to change with, especially in the tax world, is all the changes. I think we all know about the PPP loans, and employee retention credits. These things keep changing, and actually they just changed this past week again with the president adjusting how the PPP loans will be applied for and changed the application process for round 2. So the taxes were extended to July. Last year, so that changed. There's so many changes constantly that I spend most of my days on the phone with clients talking about those changes, their business, the PPP loans, how to apply, how to get the money. They were, couldn't even get on the portals of the banks. The banks were having trouble, with their technology to accept all these applications. The SBA was overwhelmed. So it was a constant barrage of change, from the economic and from the tax perspective that, it's still ongoing. I'll tell you, with the, it's going on in 2021. So it's just been a constant change. They changed the rules. The SBA would drop rules on the website, usually about 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then the emails would start either late at night. Someone was up late watching the website, and then the emails would start, and it'd be all over the next day. And then they might drop a new rule. So, so it's really been a challenge, and they've been changing and adapting to those rules, sometimes on a daily basis, from the incentive, right? The economic incentive, as well as their clients, their customers, and getting products, getting technology, or if they're a service organization, doing it, safely, and if their intellectual product delivering is going to be more technology driven than it was before, and if it's a physical product, they got to figure out a way to do it safely and get it to the customer, in a timely manner. So it's been, a year like no other, and I don't think 2021 is going to be that much different as far as changing and innovating, because things are constantly changing with a new administration, a new, new government, essentially, that, everything we got used to for the last 4 years, they're seem to be shifting. So it's going to keep moving along.
Great. I'll have to remember that excuse when I buy grain alcohol that I'm developing hand sanitizer. So, I can justify that. So we've heard your stories. We've heard your personal connection. How do you define innovation in 2021? What is innovation? How do people be prepared to pivot? What advice do you give to the independent business owners that we have on this call? Anybody?
Look, the most important, I'm sorry. The most important thing for business owners to understand is that they really, that the change that we've seen over the last year is just a reflection of what we're going to see in the future. I think change is coming at a faster and faster pace. And the businesses that are going to survive and those that are going to thrive are those that have a culture that allows them to adapt to this change on an expedited basis. And what we've seen this year is businesses respond in an unprecedented way to incredible need for change. but I think that's just a reflection of what's going to go on now and what we see. We do a lot of surveys of business owners and what their thinking is and how they're approaching business. And the one thing that we see in those surveys all the time is that business owners say that there is less of a safety net under their business today than there ever has been, meaning that it used to be you produced a good product, you did it at a fair price, you treated your customers well. You could go on vacation expecting that today, tomorrow, and over the next period of time, your business was going to continue and be safe. Today, there are just so many forces impacting the business, whether it be new competition from overseas, new technologies coming in, that business owners, just when they go to sleep at night, have a little bit more concern about what they're going to wake up to in the morning. And I just think that is going to be the roadmap for the future.
Tom?
I was just going to say, for our clients, I encourage them to ensure that information continues to flow freely. In other words, now that they're not necessarily together physically in their workplace and they're more remote, they have to continue to look for, and I have to remind myself this all the time as well. You have to continue to look for other platforms, electronic platforms, to ensure that information is flowing, and also that information is readily accessible. So, again, I think there has to be that free flowing workspace, that digital workspace that your employees need to have access to, where they can access each other, but simultaneously they can easily access the information they need. That's certainly true of a law firm. And I really think that's true of any workplace where there needs to be interaction and people need to exchange ideas to create a better work product. So that's my theme, and that's my challenge, and that's the point of discussion that I have with our clients in terms of dealing with this new normal.
And with regard to opportunity, I think that innovation is about identifying bottlenecks, anticipating bottlenecks in the economy. The economy changed dramatically several times, and it's going to change again. You look at the unprecedented number of people who moved to New York City, from New York City to New Jersey, and no one expected that was going to cause a car shortage when people went from 0 cars to 2 cars, but it did. Right. What's going to happen this fall when people try to schedule all the weddings and other events that were missed over the last couple of years? There are going to be bottlenecks again. And there are definitely signs out there as to what those are going to be, and there's opportunities in those bottlenecks.
Wonderful. Jennifer, what about innovation in 2021? What advice do you have for independent businesses?
Yeah, well, I think Alan touched on it with the comment around culture. I think that this was a great year for us to embrace change even more so than we have in the past. And there are areas of our business that might have been relatively stagnant. I apologize. My dog is barking in the background, so hopefully you can't hear that. One of the joys of working from home.
That dog. A lot of good ideas.
Yeah. But one of the opportunities of this year, I think, is that we were forced to change. And our goal is that we can continue that going forward. That it's not, we had to change in 2020 and now we're going to go back to doing business a certain way. That this is an opportunity for us. And we had great buy-in from our team, even team members that I think in the past might have been more resistant. So my goal is to keep that culture moving forward and really keep that kind of energy that we had when it was kind of all hands on deck. We have to figure out how to adapt our business to 2020, keep that energy moving into 2021.
Wonderful. And for the audience, we don't have a chat function, but we do have a Q&A function, and many of you have used that. So please use the Q&A function if you have some additional questions. So what's stopping companies from doing this? I mean, this is a time where innovation has to rule, but people are still resistant to that. What stops independent business leaders from innovating?
Well, Dale, if I could just make a comment, I mean, one challenge is exhaustion. And just trying to deal with the issues of the day, whether it's trying to protect your employees as well as yourself and your family from the the threat of coronavirus to ensuring that your colleagues, your workforce is able to balance caring for their parents as well as caring for their children and manage homeschooling. It's not the best environment for innovation and ideas, but it's just very inspiring to listen to the folks on the panel today, because they obviously they're all balancing that, and they're being insightful, and they're being innovative, and they're being creative. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to continue to carve out time to focus on innovation while we're making sure that homeschooling is going well, that mom and dad are getting on the computer and getting an appointment for the vaccine. I think that's what it's all about. It's really making sure that we still have the space to be innovators and to not only think, but then to execute on those ideas.
I would say that, whenever we have disruptive change, and, some of it, and clearly not much more disruptive change than the pandemic has caused us, there are companies that are the disruptors and those that are the disruptees, those who are going to come out as winners and those that have come out as losers. And what I think this year has shown us is that those people, again, who have the culture, the mentality to pivot quickly and adjust, really, many companies we've seen have come out of this much stronger than they went into it. But we're also seeing some whose decline was dramatically accelerated by this. And to me, it all comes down to leadership.
I would probably be remiss if, as the accountant in the proverbial room, not to say, what could hesitate people would be the cost of change, right? As Alan had mentioned, there's some exhausted entrepreneurs that maybe were looking to get out and say, okay, now's a good time to sell. If their business is doing well, and the price is right, they might get out. So, everyone is looking at the cost, and a good entrepreneur wants a return on their investment. So it's a survival as well as making sure that the money is well spent. And, as we all know, pivoting technology and innovation doesn't always reap a return of investment. So that will hesitate some people, and it's part of the evaluation of moving forward. But as we all know, you got to invest to make money as well. So it's the balancing act.
I think some of it goes back to what Aaron Price said earlier about companies feel the need that they need to hit a home run. They need a seat at the table to be successful. And when companies are failing and they feel like they need to hit a home run, they might think they need to completely shapeshift and change their business model, because there's no way their existing business model is going to cut it. But what they don't realize is just making slight incremental innovations in your business model can lead to great success. I mentioned we had success with face shields and gowns. I didn't mention we completely fell on our face with 6 or 7 other items that never launched. But if we didn't try 8 or 9 different items, we wouldn't have found 2 items that carried us from March until August or September.
Great. Aaron, you've been nice enough to hang around, and I want to involve you in this conversation. You've seen a lot of companies who've gotten their people to get involved in innovation. What advice do you have? How does a company get their people involved in innovation?
Good thing I was paying attention. I do think culture plays a huge role. And sorry, I can't seem to get my camera color to refresh, so I'm gonna be a little red for the rest of this. But I think that people get a little too comfortable with the status quo. And if they're given the flexibility to fail, that's a big deal in an organization where a lot of people are concerned about their job, and innovation requires failure. Given that flexibility to fail and some incentives around success, then I think that can accelerate things. And some really aggressive timelines, by the way. Companies often lose here because they get lazy, or they accept we'll try this in the next cycle and it'll take a year, and 17 other companies popped up in the meantime. So I do think the cultural piece and creating an environment where it's okay to fail is really important.
And so we're getting at the end of the hour. So people don't realize this was an innovation, this session. We were supposed to do this last spring, but this little thing called the pandemic happened, and really much of the focus was on the northwest part of the state. That people don't look at that as an economic engine. So I wanted to throw out, what can we do to really help that part of the state that's often forgotten to become more of an economic engine for New Jersey?
Well, I
Thoughts?
can speak a moment about what we're doing at Thorlabs. So, we're in Newton. I don't know how many folks are familiar with our area, but almost a kind of post-industrial town in some ways. We had a lot of manufacturing maybe 100 years ago. And, other than Thorlabs, not a ton of manufacturing remains. So we do have sometimes issues recruiting talent on the kind of engineering manufacturing side. So what we've looked to do, and this is actually a problem across the country, especially with optics technicians specifically. So we've partnered with SCCC. We've kind of modeled it on Monroe Community College up in the Rochester area to build out an optics technician program. So we're kind of training our own source of skilled technicians. So I think, for us, that's one of the areas, and we're hoping that folks that grew up in the area, live in the area, maybe looking for a second career, they're more incentivized to stay. So that's kind of our big focus, is building out the talent pool here in Newton. We also have a machine tools program with SCCC. So, that's one way.
Wow, that's great. One of the questions in the box, and this will probably be one of our last questions, for college students, what advice do you give to college students who want to be in this innovation economy and want to play a role? Anybody have any thoughts? You mentioned some things, Jennifer, but what other thoughts about for college students?
Well, I just have to say, I did not think I would be in this position when I graduated from college over 10 years ago now. I did not intend to return to the family business. So I would say to a recent graduate, be open to your career being kind of circuitous and taking opportunities as they arise. And I think, it's difficult to plan out a 10-year plan that nothing's going to go awry. I think as you've, maybe listened to us, there's a lot of pivoting involved in building a successful business. And I think that's true for building a successful career as well.
Excellent. Aaron, you want to say
I'd
something?
add on to that, Dale. I would say that having a .edu address opens a lot of doors. And so I would say network, send that. I've probably sent thousands of cold emails to people, and some percentage of those have responded. And that's how I've gotten some of these very impressive speakers to show up at our event. And so leverage that same kind of cold outreach mentality, be very to network digitally is what I'm getting at. And by sending an email from an edu address, being concise with your ask and respectful of the person's time, you may send 1,000, but if you get, or if you might send 10, if you get one response, then you're on your way. And I think you will, leverage LinkedIn, find some relevancy, comment on people's posts, be in their world, and then just try to network a bit so that as things come up, you have people you can ask for some advice. And I think if you're very pointed about how you ask for people's time, you'll be surprised how many people are willing to be helpful.
I love that, Aaron. I just want to say there are a lot of people out there that do want to help young graduates. I know I myself, I try to answer those emails.
I would add that if you see an opportunity that is going to require a lot of work and a lot of burden to accomplish, and you might not even be guaranteed that you get that opportunity, those are the opportunities to go after, because you're going to have a lot less competition for work that nobody wants to do.
And tying that into failure, but when I got my MBA at Wharton, and they gave us a book, they gave each of the graduates a book. It's How to Lose $100 Million is the name of the book. And so, so the whole idea was, failure is education. That's your real MBA. That's the Rhodes Scholarship, ROAD scholarship. And so I think students are, they hear so many of these stories of, oh, so-and-so sold their company for $1 billion. They don't hear the back end, the backstories. So we're almost at time. I'm going to turn it over to Joan in a minute or two. Any final word that anybody wants to say as we close out this innovation? It's been fantastic, this innovation panel. Any kind of light bulb? Tom?
Dale, if I could just jump in to make one point. First of all, unfortunately, you mentioned the northwestern part of the state, and I've demonstrated at times that we're still a little bit behind on high-speed internet and broadband access, and we need to focus on that to ensure that the entire state has the infrastructure it needs to inspire innovation and to service innovation. But my real point is that I hope for young people coming into the workforce and post college have a broad vision. And it's not just to have a startup company that they eventually can sell and make a lot of money on and then ride off into the sunset. It's a vision, and Jennifer does not take enough credit for herself, for her father and her family for what they've done, because I'm very familiar with Thorlabs and the impact they have had upon the northwestern part of the state of New Jersey and Newton, New Jersey and Sussex County, because they indeed have given employment and opportunity that was just not foreseen in this area, but also they've changed the community and they've enriched the community in terms of mixed use development and just such creative and impactful strategies. So I would encourage people starting out and young people to have a broad vision, not just focused on financial success, but focus on the impact they can have on a community beyond their business that can really bring about change. So that's just my final thought. Thanks.
Great stuff. Well, that's our final thought. Jennifer, Mitch, Doug, Alan, Tom, and Aaron, thank you all very, very much. This was really great. We could have gone on for another hour, but your brilliance has shown through. So thank you. Joan, I'll turn it over to you for the final word.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Innovation for 2021. So at this point in the program, we hope that your minds are churning on different strategies that you're going to pursue in your own businesses starting today. With that in mind, on behalf of today's sponsors, Laddey, Clark & Ryan, Nisivoccia, the Rothman Institute, and the DAC Group, we thank all of you for participating in this morning's events. Special thanks to you, the panelists, and Dale for moderating, sharing your thoughtful insights and your words of wisdom. Also, thank you to the attendees for taking time out of your day to listen and to learn about innovation. We wanted to let you know that you will all be receiving a recording of today's event. In addition, you will also have a survey, so if you could just take a few minutes and send us the survey back, it'll be helpful in preparing additional programs. And on behalf of the sponsors, once again, we encourage you to innovate your business practice, because that's what this year is all about. So thank you and have a great day. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.